Welcome to the Whiskey Congress. Honest, open talk dedicated to speaking the truth to those who are open to hearing it. Black, white, right, left. Most importantly, honest, bold, and fueled by good whiskey. In Whiskey Veritas, we are Whiskey Congress. Join the evolution.
Whiskey Congress is back in session. Stephen and I are together in the Cleveland studio on a beautiful day in Cleveland. Haven't seen you in a while. Good to see you, man.
I know.
You've been giving injury updates lately. You're brace-free now. It's good to see.
Yeah, brace-free. We are 10 weeks out from surgery, so I have removed the brace. I am doing squats to a box with a kettlebell and doing some balance stuff. Started dragging a sled. I started with a stationary bike. I did the Stairmaster yesterday, or I did the Stairmaster Monday or Tuesday. I can't remember which. Today's Wednesday. So correct. I did that for like 7 minutes. And leg got a little fatigued. I was gassed. My conditioning sucks, which is uncommon for me. So, that's a little bit of an adjustment, finding myself out of breath in situations normally where I would be fine. So that is, because you want to tackle it all in one day. It's like, well, I'll just be on the Stairmaster for 45 minutes and that'll solve that. No, it won't. But it's coming.
Bruce Smith workout.
Yeah. So it's interesting because I am looking at this. I'm thinking about longevity, long-term wellness and health, but I'm still competitive. I'm still a competitive power lifter, and I want to remain capable, right, of being able to, if someone calls and says, hey, can you help me move? I want to be able to move stuff. If I have to react quickly to a situation in public, right, like
sure.
a car accident or something happens and there's an emergency, being able to act quick and be able to, respond to that appropriately. I think that is kind of everyone's responsibility, and you should sort of keep yourself in shape to do that, right? I remember in the early 2000s, the movie The 300 came out, right?
Sure.
And that kind of started the whole CrossFit thing. But the one thing I took from that wasn't so much, that I was so curious about all the workouts that they were doing to get as ripped as they were in the movies, but my thought process was, when I watched that movie, thinking about the Spartan civilization and some of these, old like they physically just did things all the time, right? Carried heavy stones and rocks and were able to swing, 100-pound swords and all this other stuff. Like these people were physically capable all the time because they had to be. And we don't have to be because we have so many creature comforts, and in the U.S. especially, we have so many first world problems, right? That it's just easy for us to get soft. And so for the longest time, I've tried to do things to keep myself hard.
I see what you did there.
But, being limited has played some mind tricks on me.
Yeah.
But the coolest thing about this is had a young kid. He just graduated from Cleveland State. Came up to me just today and was just like, dude, I've been watching you since you got hurt, and I just think it's really cool that you haven't missed any time in the gym and you're here every day. That's really cool. And I hope that he said, I hope that when I get to your age, I can, do what you're doing. And if I get injured, I can recover from it. And I'll say this, one of the things about the reason why I work out is so that, look, as we age, our bodies are going to break down. Right? No matter what. Doesn't matter.
I'll try to imagine what that's like.
Right? Like, no matter what, your body's going to break down. The advantage that I have over a lot of people my age, older, and even younger is that I've worked out consistently. And over the last, I would say, 10 to 15 years, I've tried to be smart about it. Right? I've tried to take ego out of it, and I still push myself, but I still try to work and push my capacity. And because of that, and I study a lot. Like it's like if I wasn't working in housing, then I should be doing something that relates to physical fitness, wellness, the body, or something, because I study it all the time, right? Because I want to understand how my body works. And because I understand how my body works, because I've trained it for so long, like this isn't the first major injury I've had. Like I tore my tricep literally off the elbow, right? It took the end cap of my elbow, right, and was rolled up into my shoulder. And I'm back to benching in the, high 400s again. And I think the benefit of all the stuff that I've done over the years is that I understand how my body works. I've trained and conditioned it so that it's strong, but when it does break, it makes it a lot easier to fix when, one, you know exactly how your body works and what you need to do to fix it, and two, because it's already strong, like it takes less time to recover, even though I'm 44 years old going on 45, right? So
I want to thank you for your text the other day, by the way. I turned 54.
Happy birthday, Jim.
Thank you, Steve.
Happy
and I get a text
birthday.
saying, you're officially a decade older than me again. I'm like, okay.
It's a jab I have to take at you every year.
I understand.
Right? It's because I love you.
I appreciate that very much, or do I?
But yeah, I didn't mean to take up that much time of the show talking about it, but I think it's important so that, like, I'm not lifting for ego. I'm not lifting so that I look good on the beach, right? My whole thing is this. If I'm strong, if I'm capable, if I've got the conditioning to go for an extended period of time, whether it's, running, jogging, helping people move, something at work, like I can't tell you the number of times with this whole 3D printing experience where we were able to get shit done because I was just flat out strong enough to do something where we didn't have to go
concrete
right, like where we didn't have to go buy a tool, we didn't have to go use a forklift. It was just like, look, the time it's going to take you to go get the forklift, drive it over here, get everything all set up, I can just pick this thing up and move it, right? Like that has value, right? Like so that's what I think of. So I figure if I live to be strong, I condition myself so that I can go for extended periods of time. I don't eat like an asshole all the time, right? Like sometimes
Little
I do.
Debbie.
Right? I do love me some Little Debbies and snacks, but if I do those things, I will be strong and capable, and at the end of the day, I won't be upset with the way that I look when I'm naked in the mirror, right? Right? I mean, I won't be upset with how I look in the mirror with my shirt off. Okay,
let's go there.
But I mean, at the end of the day, that's
Sure.
the goal.
No, I get you.
Right? Like I want to be able to look down, see my dick, and see my toes. If I could see my dick, I could see my toes, right? And I can run a mile in under 10 minutes, then I feel like we're doing okay.
Well, we've now discussed your dick and toes more than I expected in the show. And the good news is that
we can get deep into that if you want.
I very much prefer not to. But
you ever tried to like touch your toes to your dick? See how flexible you were?
No.
Okay, weirdo.
Oh yeah, I'm the weirdo. All right, I don't know. This took a turn I did not expect. And it's great that you're getting back into the thing, but the world might end before you actually get back in shape because...
Well, I got to get myself in shape because it looks like we're headed towards some shit.
We are definitely headed towards some shit. And some of it's domestic, a lot of it's domestic, but we also have India and Pakistan, and that cannot be overstated as a threat to international instability. I mean, both those countries are industrially powerful, India more so than Pakistan. They've had a dispute over the Kashmir region for as long as I can remember. Yeah. But they're also both nuclear powers.
Yep.
And, I've been banging the drum of what would it feel like if we were on the brink of World War III over a bunch of reasons. This just adds to that. I don't know how that all unfolds in terms of who's with who.
Look, man, I mean, you got... Russia, Ukraine's still a thing,
right?
Which,
by the way, and Gaza and Palestine and
that's what I was. I mean, like if you go through it, right? Russia, Ukraine is still a war that's going on. Trump said he was going to end it the first day that he got in, and in the last month we've heard Marco Rubio saying if Putin doesn't agree to this, then we're out. If Zelensky doesn't agree to this, then we're out. and Putin's definitely going to agree. He doesn't agree, and then he attacks Ukraine. Like, so you've got that. You've got Israel and Palestine, and that almost seems like it's coming close to an end, and not because of any brilliant negotiations. It's just that Israel has bombed the shit out of Gaza to the point where there's not much left.
Right.
Right. Now we've got, India and Pakistan actually fighting. North Korea has been being sort of the annoying little brother making noise for the last 2 years.
Right.
Right. Like they haven't done anything. China, sort of.
China pats him on the head and says,
well, I was going to say, China and
South Korea.
No, what's the island they want to take?
Taiwan.
Taiwan, yeah. I mean, China and Taiwan have been a thing the last,
right.
For a while, but China's gotten more aggressive in that. And so, when do you officially say we've begun World War III? I don't know. I don't think it started yet, but I feel like it's very palpable, right?
Yeah.
Like you can feel it in the air. The air is thick with World War-ishness. And it's very unsettling. And then it's not like everything is stable here at home, right? Like, so India and Pakistan, India and Pakistan are fighting over the Kashmir region and other things. They're bombing each other. Pakistan is saying that they took down Indian jets. India is saying that and we have seen where they've taken out, Pakistani strongholds. The Trump administration came out and said that Yemen, right, that the Houthis in Yemen have decided that they put down their arms, and then yet I see that there's all sorts of shit still going on in Yemen. So, like,
backed by Iran.
Right. Like, I mean, it's just like this thing is blowing up.
It's scaling up, yeah.
Right. Right in front of our eyes, and then we've got an administration that is essentially kind of stirring the pot on everything, right? They're trying to play both sides of almost all of these different sort of conflicts, and it's unclear what the stance is. Like, what's our goal, right? Like, I mean, we said we were going to stay out of war, but we're sending, we're bombing places. Like, there's just, this is a volatile time. Right. I mean, and I apologize that we're not going into depth into any one thing,
right.
But any one of these topics you could talk about for hours if you get into the history and the geopolitics and the potential impact. And when you put it all together, like any one of those conflicts that we just referenced, including Yemen, are just, they're too big of a topic to
right.
try to tackle in an hour.
And we're two dudes in a studio in Cleveland. The lack of seriousness of our government, this is going to sound like a weird thing to say, but it seems to me like we're as well informed as the folks who actually need to be informed, or at least we seem to be taking this more seriously than the people whose job it is to take it seriously seem to be taking it. And we're sitting here going, Trump is now saying, I'm going to rename the Persian Gulf the Gulf of Arabia. What? Are you a fucking child? Like, what makes... that's clearly a slap in the face to Iran, because Iran is a country that was, the population is Persian. So it's like, we're going to tell the people that you've been against for decades, the Arabian, people, Saudis and Yemenis or whatever, we're just going to slap you in the face with this and say this stupid thing. There's no value in that, and yet Trump, who put out a picture of him dressed like the Pope, which was ridiculous, put out a picture of him dressed like a Jedi with fucking Arnold Schwarzenegger. Do you see the Jedi picture?
Yeah, Jim, I saw.
So what cracked me up is I went down the rabbit hole a little bit, and everyone was like, his lightsaber is red. That means he's with the Sith. And I'm like, okay, you are huge nerds. Stop it with that. But the fact that they are doing caricatures of this guy as everything from the Pope to a muscle-bound Jedi.
Well, the thing with the Pope, I mean, Trump tweeted or Truth Socialed or whatever.
Yeah, it was Truth, I think, yeah.
Trump put that one out, right? Now,
right.
They've been using AI and renderings of Trump as a jacked bodybuilder, like taking
Sure, the
his
Rambo
head.
thing. And
Yeah, I mean, they've been doing that going back to 2016. The Pope thing, though, he put out and sort of promoted after the Pope had died. We didn't talk about that, but it's just like that. I just think that's in poor taste. Now, the problem is that all the MAGA people are like, oh, no one can take a joke. We think it's hilarious.
Right, exactly.
Right, and I'm a Catholic Christian. I support this. I'm like, we finally had someone out of the Catholic Church come out and say it was a bishop. I don't even know who the bishop was, but there was a bishop that came out and said that Trump putting that picture out was very disrespectful. They hadn't even had the initial conclave yet, and it was in poor taste, and they wanted an apology and him to rescind. It came out very late. It was like a week after he had done it. But I think going to the picture of Trump as the Pope, it just speaks to the hypocrisy of this MAGA movement that are that are trying to force Christianity as the religion of the U.S.
Right.
And they saying, pushing education towards private Christian charter schools. There's all that's going on with it, but it's. I think the image itself just sort of speaks to not only the hypocrisy, but the insincerity.
The tone deaf.
No, not tone deaf. I mean, they're just so insincere with their claims of Christianity.
Oh, sure.
Right.
Sure.
And so that kind of pushes us down into the SCOTUS decision, where the Supreme Court upholds this trans ban, banning transgender members from being in active service in the military, and basically allows the DoD to go through, and if you're trans, then you're out, right? And this is one where, look, I'm not a trans person. I don't understand that particular concept of what it's like to be physically a man, but then you feel like a woman, or however you want to, however that goes down. But what I do know is that, like, we've had trans members of the military that have served honorably that haven't had an issue. Their reasoning for this is just that between the cost and the concerns about their mental health, if you've got this issue on whether you're a man or a woman, then can you really do your job in the military as it's asked for? The military needs to be uniform, and we can't treat people differently, so let's get rid of anyone who, by their nature, needs to be treated differently, right? Which is how they're classifying trans people. It just doesn't feel very Christian to me. And given the instability that we just talked about, we've got conflicts popping off all over the fucking world. This doesn't seem like the time that we need to go be booting people out of the fucking military.
Right. But
now, their argument is that the recruiting numbers are up, and they are, right. Recruiting numbers are up in the last 6 months or so, but that doesn't negate the fact that, like, you've got an issue going on in Europe, you've got an issue going on in Israel, Gaza,
the Middle East,
right, in the Middle East. You've got Pakistan and India. You've got you also have just China in general, right?
And we've said this multiple times. They are just sitting back and going.
Yeah, I mean, and the thing is that, like, realistically, from a militarily, I don't even know China. I think China's at a point where we've got our military. We want to keep advancing our tech, but what China realized is that how they're going to win is not going to be through military force, and it's going to be through exactly what's happening. And with Trump in office, we played directly into their hands. This whole tariff war, China's laughing at.
Absolutely.
Right? Because, like all these other countries where we're going through and severing ties with allies and trade partners that we've had for decades and have established, like we've gone through, we've ruined all those relationships, at least for the short term while Trump is in office. And all these other countries are saying, all right, well, look, we can't rely on the United States as a trade partner. We can't rely on them militarily. So we will just work around them, right? And Trump and his team feel like, well, we're so great, they can't live without us. They're going to come crawling back. And, I mean, for the sake of us, we kind of hope that they're right at this point. We can't stop them, right? We can't stop them, and we can't, you know, so you almost hope that they're right, but they're probably not right. Like, ultimately, like, all these other countries are going to realize, like, hey, not only do we not need the U.S. as a trade partner, not only do we not need the U.S. as a military you know, trusted, you know, ally. Exactly. But what we also don't need the U.S. dollar, right? And so,
gee, have someone been saying this?
No, you have, and I never thought that we as a country would allow this to happen, and yet as soon as we elected Trump, right? It's weird because I never thought that we would let this happen, but I also was the one pounding the table saying that they're going to reelect Trump, right? You know, even, you know, in this last election, I was the one that was like, look, this is almost a done deal. Like, he's going to get reelected. And people looked at me like I was crazy and said, oh, well, you hate Kamala Harris. I'm like, look, I want her to win. We need her to win. But I'm just telling you, all the numbers point to Trump winning this thing. He does. And now he's done the things that you were worried about in terms of our allies and our partners and basically them turning their back on us. We haven't felt the effects of it yet, but it's coming.
But you can't unring the bell.
No, you can't.
And I use the analogy all the time of when a top is spinning and it's got its rotation going, it's fine. But when it starts to wobble, it's fucking over. And I fear that we're there. And one thing that drives me nuts is people say, oh, you're a big Harris fan, are you? You're big. No, I'm not a fan in particular. I do think the Democratic Party fucked up big time because for the third election in a row, they coronated the candidate rather than going through a legitimate primary. In the case of Biden, the country was so fucked up that he was represented change. You know, I mean, I don't know what Kamala would have done in a primary, but I do know that Biden's refusal to say, hey, remember what I said? I'm a one-term president. I'm a bridge president. Let's get this shit back together. We never had that. And to your point, when your election strategy is, if you don't do this, it's because you're a racist, it's because you're a sexist, you're basically telling people, bullying people, or trying to bully people into saying, oh, well, if you don't do it, and they're like, I'm not a sexist, I'm not a racist, but you're calling me these things. You know, it's water to the bridge now. It's over.
It is, but I mean, like, I still deal with it, right? Because I contend that Kamala Harris wasn't a good candidate, right? Like, she was the first one out in the 2015-2016 election, right? Or I'm sorry, the 2020 election.
Right.
You know, she was the first one out because her campaign was managed poorly, and everyone's like, "Oh, but she got Biden with a zinger in that first debate."
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, congratulations. So is that what we're saying? If you can get one of your opponents with a zinger in a fucking debate, then you should be president of the United States? Are you kidding me?
No, you're 100% right.
And like, so, but here's the thing. Now you fast forward to 2024, right? This past election, and it's like, guys, if you don't get this right, Trump's coming back into office, and like, they literally laid out the blueprint in Project 2025 of what they want to do. So you better get this right. And so they took that to mean, let's do this all wrong.
I mean, look,
right? Because like, somebody's got to get in there and say, Joe, I don't give a fuck what you want to do. I don't give a fuck what you think value you think you have or you brought. You are going to be the anchor that sinks this ship. So you will be a one-term president, and we need to figure out who's the next president is going to be. We need to have a primary. We need to let the progressives do what they want to do. We need to let the moderates figure out what they want, let them fight it out, put the candidate out there that wins, and that's how we save our democracy. That should have been the conversation. And if it wasn't the conversation, right, or even if it was, it had to be the conversation until Joe got it through his head, and it had to happen before he says, okay, well, now I'm going to step out 4 months before the goddamn election. Right, and then it's just like, it doesn't matter whether Kamala Harris was going to be a good candidate or not. They hung themselves by doing it that way because they played into every fucking stereotype and bullshit argument that the conservatives were throwing out, that GOP, MAGA, everything that they were saying, right? They fed right into it, right? And people bought it hook, line, and sinker.
And I'm going to go back to the cult statement that when you're trying to get people who are in a cult to not act in a cultish fashion, feeding into them, just fanning the fire. It's just all that happened. All right, I mean that's past, and it's
well.
If we could rewind.
I mean, like if we can't. So bringing us back to current day. So SCOTUS says, all right, no trans members in the military. Right? It's a paragraph. There's not a lot of depth to it. What we know is that your 3 left-leaning judges opposed it, right? But they're outnumbered, so it doesn't really matter.
Right.
Like they're just saying, like, look, if we had more, if there were more of us, we would have pushed this back. But there's only 3 of us. We say no. The other guys say yes. Okay, fine. So that's worrisome. But apologies to the LGBTQ community and trans people. It's not the biggest issue on the board, right? Like, so I don't agree with that opinion. I think it's wrong, but we got to move past it because it's nowhere near at the top of the list. Pete Hegseth has come out, and he's a Secretary of Defense, and said, hey, by the way, we're going to cut, I think, 20% of our generals out of the military, right? So the people who have the most experience, who are, college educated, they've been to war, they've been to battle, they've looked at all these generals, they're going to cut, I think, like 20% of the generals out of the military, right? So Army, Navy, Air Force, your leaders, the people who have the experience and knowledge and everything else that are helping us figure out how to do it, gone.
Yeah.
Right? Now, we don't have a timeline when this is going to take place, but this concerns me in terms of military readiness because Pete Hegseth himself doesn't have the experience that we need in the position that he holds, right? What he should be doing is leaning into these, 3-star, 4-star, all these generals with all these patches and ribbons and medals and all, lean into those people, right? Everyone's saying that you don't have the experience. So instead of sitting there with your ego and saying, well, I'm going to get rid of the people who know because I know. And Pete Hegseth has a history. He's got, for the longest time, he's had an issue with the upper management in the military, that being generals and everything else, probably because they, on a pretty regular basis while he was serving, put him in his place and said, shut the fuck up. So he got mad. He's petty and he's small. So he's going through and saying, we're going to fire these people because I don't like them. That's what this is. I don't like generals. I don't like people knowing more than me, so I'm going to get rid of them.
But do you think there's a more, I'm considered a more sinister thing, and that is that if people are saying that they're going to try to institute martial law, I don't think that's reactionary. That is a legitimate fear, and if you get rid of the people that might be able to say...
Let me stop you right there.
Okay, try.
I don't know if it's martial law, okay? But what I do know is I agree with this, with the intent and the sentiment that you're suggesting, right? That essentially what they're doing is getting rid of the people who would push back against them to say, you can't do this.
Right.
Is it martial law? I don't know. Is it turning the military on U.S. citizens? Is it, shipping people out to different countries? Whatever, right? But they're getting rid of the people who they know that they can't get on their side. The people that they feel that are just, look, I've been doing this a long time. You guys are doing things ass backwards. I'm not going to follow that order. They're saying, you know what? We're not going to give you your Crimson Tide moment, right? We're not going to give you your Gene Hackman or Denzel Washington, whoever you thought was right in that scenario. If you've seen the movie, you're not getting that moment. We're just going to fire you beforehand, either install the people that we want or just not replace you, right? We're just going to merge a bunch of shit together because I read something that they're talking about pushing the African command with the European command, right? Because that makes a hell of a lot of sense. And then merging some, because we have these different sort of regional commands, right? Like, so you've got your South American, your North American, your European,
Pacific,
your African, Pacific, all that other stuff. So we have all these different sort of commands, and then there's a whole sort of military structure that falls under each of those various umbrellas. And then what they're going to do is start to merge them together. And I'm assuming that the people who will be in control of those various commands will be Trump loyalists, right?
Which is about the safest assumption you could ever possibly make, because that's all that seems to matter right now.
Right, and we know that they're basically going through the government and just trying to quell anyone who is not a Trump sycophant, a Trump loyalist. If anyone who was appointed by Biden that has any sort of ties to the left or to Democrats, anything like that, they're getting rid of all those people, right? And that's not a secret. That's just what they're doing. Right, so they're doing that through different ways and through both the civil and the military branches, and this is how they're doing it through the military branches, right?
Yeah, and again, all right, martial law might be the wrong term, but
I'm not saying that to say that martial law is off the table, but what I am saying is,
we've seen the due process is off the table, right? We clearly don't give a fuck about due process anymore.
What's happening is that they're consolidating power under the executive branch, under Trump, and the lackeys that he controls, right? So that they can say, whether it's martial law or launching a war against another country for unjust reasons, unjust causes, whatever it is that they want to do, they'll be able to do, right? So I'm not saying that martial law is off the table. What I'm saying is you guys are being too narrow-minded. Right, you're saying martial law because that's the most dramatic thing that gets everyone up in arms. But there's way more risk and danger to what's happening. The way they're consolidating power, the way they're eliminating people of knowledge who know, to keep it simple, right and wrong. Right, in some of these different situations, that's what's happening. Right, like, so let's get rid of all the people who are going to tell us no. Let's consolidate power under our fun bunch of group of people, right, who all think the same. So then we could do whatever we want to do. And, they have broken the backs of the Supreme Court to the point Stephen Miller is suing Justice Roberts right now.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, I mean, because, over a decision. And so, like, it's obvious what they're doing. The question is, what are they going to do with this power once it's all consolidated? And the problem is that their followers all think that this is great. It's all working out for them. And what any history, movie, book, fiction, nonfiction, like, we know how this plays out, right? We know how this plays out. By the time the people who need to realize what's going on, by the time they realize what is actually happening, it is too late, right? And so the question is, are there enough people out there that see what the government is doing, see what the Trump administration is doing, see it as the demonstrative threat that we believe that it could be, right, and then do something about it? Or are we just sort of trapped in this, well, we have civility and there's processes and we have to go through it, and we'll wait for midterms, and then once we get midterms, we'll vote out the Republicans and we'll put in more Democrats, and then that'll bring some stability. Will it? Because they're not listening to anybody right now, right? They're just saying, like, look, if you don't agree with us, you're against us, we're going to try to impeach you, fire you, get rid of you, we're going to, or just flat out ignore you and do what we want to do anyway. Supreme Court said, hey, you have to bring that guy back from that prison that you sent him to in fucking El Salvador, right? What do they say? Yeah.
Well, you said facilitate.
You said facilitate. We can't make anybody do anything, so we're actually not going to do anything. So, I don't know, fuck off, right? Instead of the Supreme Court coming out and making a firm statement like, hey, we made a ruling, you need to follow it, the Supreme Court said, well, that is unfortunate that is not going the way we planned. So now,
realistically, what can they do, though? They
can come out and say, hey, we made a fucking ruling, you need to do it. Some Congress, Senate, somebody, wake the fuck up. Like, this guy is fucking with our Constitution.
Yeah.
That's the move that needed to be made. I won't back down from that. They needed to come out, like, Roberts needed to come out and make a firm statement. We made a decision. You need to follow it.
9-0 decision.
Right. 9-0. You need to figure out how to get that motherfucker home, is what that decision said. The administration said, we're not going to do that. And you know what the Supreme Court said? Okay. What's the next thing? Oh, it's a thing for you guys? All right, well, we'll support it then. Right? So, Supreme Court has been broken. Their backs have been broken. So,
Congress is spineless.
Right. I mean, Congress can't do anything, right?
Well, they could. They're not going to.
Well, I mean, they can't do anything because we can't get nothing is being brought to the floor. They're not voting on it. It's just we are in a people want to say a constitutional crisis. We are a constitutional democratic republic. We're in all the crises, right? It's happening right before us, and then the question is, what do you do about it, right? Because then you don't have a ton of options, right? There's the one option that nobody wants to say on air or write down because of the NSA, right? But is that too far? Is that too extreme, right? Because, I mean, I'm sure people were very livid with Obama and his administration. We know they were livid with Biden in their administration. So it's just like, all right, well, they didn't start a war over Biden and Obama, so I guess we can't start a war over Trump. But Biden and Obama didn't do this. Right? They didn't do this, right? And so if you look at some of the different things that they were doing, right, and our buddy Whiskey Ben had brought this up, and this is something that I've been feeling and saying for the longest time, all you got to do is flip it, right? Hey, MAGA, if just imagine if Joe Biden literally did everything that was happening, right, that the Trump administration is doing right now, but instead of leaning towards the right, it went towards the left, right, to this same extreme, you motherfuckers would have probably already killed someone by now, right? And their argument is, oh, well, I mean, they did do all these things, and then they go back to COVID and the isolation from COVID and all that other stuff, and it's just like,
I mean, it's impossible to argue with someone who's willing to just throw logic out the window and say,
yes,
it's
right. I mean, so I mean,
it's not even moving goalposts; it's changing the fucking game.
And so, because of that, then we don't have a ton of options, right? And there's the option that no one wants to say, discuss, or in that goes back to our earlier conversation about being capable of. Because there's a whole lot of pissed off people that I'm sure they're mad enough where they could do something, but then what are they capable of doing, right? I mean, it's like you can be as mad as a hornet, but if you can't shoot a gun to save your life and you've got the physical capabilities of a 90-year-old woman with a fucking replaced hip, then what the fuck good are you, right? I mean, everybody loves fucking Rudy, a movie that I hate, but at the end of the day, right, like Rudy Rudiger wasn't good enough to fucking play and he got tossed off the fucking field, right? Like he had one good play and one good game, but at the end of the day, he wasn't good enough. So when we're talking about how do you solve this, the solution is not pretty, and it involves, one, the will to do something very extreme and being capable of doing it, and we don't have a ton of capable people on the other side, right? So that is a conundrum that we live in.
Yeah, well,
or that we're stuck with.
And unlike the previous Trump administration, now we don't have anyone checking his power. I mean,
that's the one thing he did right.
Well,
he made sure.
He
made sure that there was nobody in there that was going to trip anybody up. He got every spineless sycophant cuck that he could find, right? And put people in position, like put people that were so clueless. Put Linda McMahon as the head of the Department of Education. Sorry. Side note. Are you familiar with Jim McMahon shitting on people? Specifically,
Jim McMahon, the former Bears quarterback?
Or no, I'm sorry.
Vince
McMahon, yeah.
No.
Okay, so little side note. So Vince McMahon, head of WWE, formerly WWF, WWE.
I think he's had to. He's got caught in some scandals.
Well, he did, which is where this is coming from, right? Like, and oh, by the way, he was the CEO, and then they brought him back as chairman of the board or whatever. But he got caught up in this like sex trafficking scandal where this girl who lived in his apartment. He started sleeping with her. He gave her a job. He promoted her. Then he basically pimped her out to different people in the organization, including Laurinaitis and Triple H and all this other stuff. And then to one point where she was doing something sexually with someone else. Jim McMahon gets weird.
Vince.
Vince. Damn it, Vince. Vince McMahon literally takes a shit on her and says, keep going. And then he goes and takes a shower. This is stuff that's in the transcripts. This is not something that I pulled from some weird site that I was on. It happened more than once. So Vince McMahon shits on people.
Vince McMahon is in the scat play. Okay.
But, you've got Linda McMahon, who's the head of the Department of Education, right?
Which they're trying to get rid of.
Right, which they're basically trying to destroy. So they put someone who barely has an education herself in that position. The conservatives are making a big deal because she wrote a letter to Harvard. Harvard response was that they literally graded her paper like it was a college term paper and bled all over it.
I didn't see that.
It was hilarious and traumatic only because I'd received papers like that in college, so I didn't love to see that. But that's the state of our government right now.
Yeah.
Right.
And our military, we've had 2 fighter jets just drive off of fucking carriers. Now, I don't ever remember hearing that in my life. It's happened twice in recent...
So this one I feel a little bit different about, right? I don't, our military... Can you blame that on the Trump administration?
I'm not necessarily saying that.
I know, but what I'm saying is the way it's being presented is our government is in shambles, and a lot of the stuff we're talking about tied directly to who's in government. I don't know if these incidents with the fighter, because people are saying the airplane crashes, the helicopter crashes, the jets, that's all directly because of Trump.
And I'll agree with that because he gutted the FAA, and I have inside sources at the FAA that literally told me the day before that crash happened, it's going to get more dangerous. People are not going to work. It's okay.
That's fine. But the FAA and our who are the people up in the towers? Our
air traffic controllers.
Yeah, our air traffic controllers. They've been underfunded and under-resourced for decades.
True.
Right? Yes, getting rid of people, making a bad situation worse, there's plenty to argue there, but I'm just trying to, let's just be real. It's been a shit show for a while.
I want to use your argument, though, right back at you and say, had this happened under the Biden administration.
But listen, under the Biden administration, we literally had the fucking FAA. They blacked out, right? That whole thing with Southwest happened under Biden.
No, but I'm talking about the aircraft carrier getting jets dropped off the side of the carrier. If that happened under the Biden administration, all you would hear on Fox News is
that's fine. But we're not on Fox News.
We are definitely not on Fox News.
There's a reason why we're not on Fox News.
I don't expect an invite anytime soon.
And so, with that, right, what's happened with those jets? Neither of us know enough about jets, and much to my chagrin, because I would have loved to have been a pilot. Well, I was more of an Apache guy, but those can be on aircraft. But I'm willing to say that those are unfortunate situations. You can probably make ties to the current government, but I would say that we've been sort of dropping the ball as it relates to, I don't know, just shit in the air, right, for a while, and so I'm not going to pin that directly on them. I think it's worth mentioning, and the stuff with what happened with the plane crashes and everything else. If we want to say that you could make a tangent connection between the gutting of the FAA and the timing of it all, okay, fine. I'll listen to that argument, right? We also know that system has been outdated for long before Trump or Biden, right? That probably goes back to Bush and Clinton, right? When updates probably needed to start being made or whatever. But it's still not lost on me that this shit is happening, right? So what are we doing about it? And it doesn't seem like firing generals and admirals in the Army, Navy, Air Force, Marine Corps, everything else, is going to help solve these problems, right? Merging a bunch of commands and putting these massive operations, under the control of a person that, like, no one could be able to really make intelligent decisions with the number of decisions that need to be made, right? Like, that's not helping us. That's not helping us both domestically or internationally. So there's plenty of complaints and gripes to go around as it relates to what our current administration is doing with how they're reorganizing our military. So is it even worth sort of identifying what's their fault or not? And I would say, yes, there's probably still some value to it, to where we can't just say, something bad happened at this point in time, and so we're going to add it to the tally of bad shit that we're directly connecting to the government. Because if it happened under Obama, right, would you be saying, well, I mean, I think the argument would be like exactly what I'm saying. Like, this has been an issue for a long time, and we need to figure that out. And it's not necessarily a direct cause of the administration that's in the office. I think there's two separate issues, right? The timing of these jets isn't ideal. I don't know if anyone in this conversation knows enough to be able to say it's directly because of something that Trump and Pete Hegseth did, because they just made this announcement. Right? They just made this announcement on Monday. They haven't even fired anybody yet or got rid of anybody or whatever, however they're defining this, and this happened. Right? They've only been in office for 3 months. So what could they have done? What did they do in the last 3 months that caused that jet to fall off the fucking aircraft carrier?
My only point is, I don't ever remember hearing that happening in my life. It's happened twice in the last month. And Steve, maybe it's a thing that does happen, and I just don't know about it. I don't know.
I find it hard to believe that it hasn't happened in the last, we'll say,
20 years.
I'll even say 10 years. Right? I'm sure it has happened. I think social media, 24-hour news cycles, everything getting everyone seeing an opportunity to sort of.
Again, you could be right, but I truly believe, had it happened.
But there's two different things that happened. One slid off an aircraft carrier, and then another one just fucking crashed. Right? They didn't both just.
Okay.
They didn't both just like slide off. Like, they took a hard right and we lost 2 jets. Right? There were 2 different incidents. One did slide off an aircraft carrier. I don't know enough about that to be able to comment on it intelligently. Another one was in air and I think was going into land, and something happened.
And landing a plane on an aircraft carrier is fucking dangerous. I mean, we've seen Top Gun.
Have you ever seen it close?
Not close. I've seen it on video. I mean, the what's actually happening is fucking terrifying, right? You're landing in a very short area, and then we're getting grabbed and slammed to a stop. I would love. I can't say that. I'm very curious of what it must feel like physically to go from going that fast to stopped in that amount of time.
Yeah.
You and I have traveled a lot for work. We've been on planes. I've been on planes that had to do really aggressive stops,
yep.
And you're like, your body lunges forward, and you're like, oh, that was not fun. And that can't be in the same fucking ballpark as what those guys do routinely.
Especially when you're talking about the amount, the G-force, everything else, like the speed in which they come in, and then the suddenness of which they stop on such a short strip. We've all landed on planes, or landed in planes on the ground. Right, and you see how long it takes to get the ground. You bump, you jump up, and then you roll, and you come to a stop, and that happens over the course of a half mile.
Right.
I mean, they're doing this on basically a football field.
When you fly into LaGuardia, it's like they're slamming on the brakes like nobody's business because it's a short runway. And I mean, there have been times where I literally if I was not wearing my seatbelt, I would have face planted into the seat in front of me.
Yep.
And what they're doing is exponentially more.
Right. So
dramatic.
if what I suspect is shit like this probably happens more frequently than you and I are aware of.
Very possibly.
But the way news is, social media, you also have people who normally wouldn't say anything about these sort of things that are putting information out. Maybe because
they're
they don't
pissed
agree.
off the generals are getting fired.
Yes, whatever
fair,
it may be,
fair,
right?
Like,
so, I mean, I think there's some different factors into that need to be taken into consideration. And again, this is not me letting the Trump administration off the hook for the dog and pony show that it is. But I think if you consider yourself to be objective, you cannot get caught up in the moment of saying everything that bad that happens from Trump being elected to now is directly related to Trump's election. That's all I'm saying, right?
That's
like
fair.
we just need to be somewhat objective about this, right? Because I think like once you lose that objectivity, then how can you really get to the truth in the heart of particular issues?
All right, I agree with you fundamentally there. We're at risk of going way long again. I know the last two topics are going to be the Steve show. At least the last topic will be the Steve show. But Mike Waltz was not fired. He was reassigned to become ambassador to the UN or whatever they made him. So Mike Waltz was the guy who accidentally included a journalist in the Signal chat that was, frankly, another example of if a Democrat had done it, the right would have gone nuts. He's now been reassigned, not fired. Pete Hegseth, you and I kind of went back and forth about whether or not he would be removed. He's still where he's at. You're probably going to end up being right in this one because I think the optics of him being removed would be damaging to the administration's ego. And then...
Well, I mean, I think it's more... I mean, whenever we're talking about Trump, ego is a part of the conversation. I just think that the issue with removing Hegseth is that you're not going to find someone... There's not many people out there that you're going to find that are less qualified for him for that position, right? That you would actually put into that position, if it makes sense. He got that position because of, like, he had military experience and he was a blind Trump supporter on national Fox News media, whatever, and said things that Trump
wasn't he on Fox Business, by the way?
Okay,
I'm not. That's not.
Can we
just
yeah?
I mean,
yes, I'll just say yes just to get you to stop. But the issue is, like, so for them, it's not only the optics of, oh, we got it wrong. The issue is, like, all right, whoever we put in, if we don't think that Pete can do it, we have to put someone in that we think can do it. But we literally just announced that we're going to fire all the generals, and, like, chances are we're going to end up having to pick from the generals, right? Or unless you want to put Mike Flynn in there, and we're talking about, because the position that he holds is what
I don't even know what Mike Flynn's doing these days.
No, I'm talking about Pete Hegseth.
Yeah, okay,
right. Mike Flynn is just, I don't know what the fuck Mike Flynn is doing.
I don't either.
Like, I feel like he's running some sort of op. I just don't know for who, right? And what his because because there were people who were saying that Mike Flynn was basically QAnon, and that the whole QAnon thing was basically like a psyop that was put on by him and his. I don't even necessarily disagree with that. Like, that feels like it very well could be something that he's capable of. But, so would you put Mike Flynn in the position of Secretary of Defense to replace a Pete Hegseth, right? What's the value of that for the Trump administration? You've got another loyalist in there, but that brings a whole other set of issues, given his past, everything else. I don't know if I think that there's some semblance of, I don't know. I don't want to say common sense, but there's some semblance of that's probably a bad idea enough to where if it's not Mike Flynn, I don't know who else you put in there, right?
Well,
because anyone who you put in there because if you look at it and say, right, why did the Browns get rid of Baker Mayfield? They said, we need an adult in the room, right? So if you're getting rid of Pete Hegseth, you're saying Pete Hegseth is essentially Baker Mayfield with the Browns. They want to get rid of him because they need an adult in the room who cannot put, confidential chats on, public spaces. Okay, great. Well, who do you put in that, right? If you want that adult, excluding
Deshaun Watson probably was not the right choice.
Right. Right. So them installing Mike Flynn is basically them installing Deshaun Watson, right? That didn't go well, right? Like, that didn't go well for the Browns. And so maybe the Trump administration is looking at it and saying, yeah, we don't want to do that. Look how it worked out for the Browns. So who do you put in? You've got to put in someone with some level of experience that you could trust, that understands security protocols and everything else. And chances are there's not many of those people left, right, that the Trump administration trusts to execute their plan, right? So they're kind of stuck with Pete Hegseth, I think.
Well, and they probably don't view it as stuck. They probably view it as he's our guy. Real quick, so we've been talking about Americans, in some cases American citizens, or at least people legally here, not getting due process, getting shipped to El Salvadoran prison camps. And now we're doing the same, we're looking at doing the same thing with Libyan prisons, which, I mean, when you say, well, how could it get worse in El Salvador? Libya, I mean, first of all, Libya is not even a stable country right now. I saw this because of what you put in our, conversation, or actually Ben from Kentucky put in our conversation, and I didn't realize Gaddafi had been killed in 2011, so 14 years ago. And that country is still half controlled by a government installed by the U.S. and half controlled by a warlord. And now they're going to say, we're going to take migrants who, without due process, are going to get shipped to prisons in that country. And that's awful isn't a good enough word.
This, to me, this is more of the same, right? Because I get what you're saying, right? But whether it's El Salvador or Libya, like the place in El Salvador, SCOTUS, is hell on earth.
Yeah.
Right? And Libya is going to be the same thing.
Yep.
So I don't think that this
is...
Okay,
differentiating between two levels of awful.
It's what flavor you want, mustard or mayo on your shit sandwich. Like that's the I think it's a little bit worse because chances are, there'll be some African migrants, Middle Eastern migrants that may have some sort of tangent connection to where they're just from a geography standpoint, Libya, they may have a chance of getting out because their government has a conversation with Libya or whatever, right? But if they're, from South America, Central America, Mexico, whatever, and they get sent to Libya, like that poses a problem. But if they send the African migrants to SCOTUS, which is in El Salvador, then you've got that issue. So I think it's just a different flavor shit sandwich.
Yeah, that's fair.
That's not, I don't know if it's necessarily any worse. It's all bad.
It's really, really bad.
Right? It's really bad. Now,
but the fact that we're sending American citizens or people, even if they're not citizens, people without due process getting sent overseas or to...
Right, and my issue is their argument is, well, if they're illegal, they're not citizens, and so they don't get due process. And where I take issue with that is we need to make sure that they're not citizens, and we need to make sure that they're not afforded due process because they've been granted asylum or they're in the process of getting that asylum, right? Like, due process isn't just for... you're an American citizen for sure, right, and then we're going to violate those rights. Like, there are certain situations where you have certain rights, even if you're not an American citizen, that need to be figured out via due process.
Yeah.
Right, before we go shipping you to a country that you've never been to, you've never heard of, you have no family, and where you just basically get thrown in a pit and you disappear and die. Right? Because literally what they're saying is, the violation for coming to this country... and not doing it the proper way is that you get sent out to another country that you've never been to before, and your punishment is whatever that government deems possible, deems to be
whatever.
Right.
Their choice.
And that's a problem. Now, they in their minds they have also come up with an alternative plan where they're going to basically they've said that they want to, bring back Alcatraz. Right.
You know what? We talked about that briefly, and I've forgotten it. But yes, go on.
And
how fucking ridiculous!
Look, chances are you saw the movie The Rock with Nicolas Cage and Sean Connery. A really good, terrible movie.
That's the right way to describe it.
Right? Yeah. No,
I love it. I love it. It's trash, but
I'll watch it every time it's on, but it's a terrible movie. Right? Like, the prison that no one could escape from, blah, 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 yada, yada, yada. Well, here's the thing. Alcatraz closed in 1963. Why? Because it was too expensive to keep open. And the cost of getting Alcatraz up to speed without operational costs, right? Like, just the cost to fix the problems that they had with it before they closed in 1963 was $4 million, right? $4 million in 1963. You know what that equals right now, today in 2025?
1963, $4 million. I'm going to guess $250 million.
Not that bad. $40 million.
Oh, okay.
All right. But that's the issue is that number would be to fix the problems that they had then.
Right.
Right? The island has sat there since it is now 2025. Right? So the island has sat there for 60 plus years in the middle of the fucking Pacific Ocean, getting beat up by salt water for fucking 60 years. Right? So the problems have only been exacerbated. Right? The cost of everything has gone up. Right? So that $40 million number, right, I don't even think is a realistic low end of what it would cost to get the prison operational. And that doesn't include how much it would cost to operate it. Remember, Alcatraz is an island out in the Pacific fucking Ocean, right?
Yep.
Off the fucking San Francisco Bay.
Yep.
Right?
I saw it a couple months ago.
Yeah, so, I mean, in order to not only get it up to speed and operate it, you got to figure out, like, they don't have plumbing, they don't have water treatment, and everyone's like, oh, well, that's where the prisoners go. So, well, guess what? There are people who will have to work there.
Yeah.
Right? So the people who have to work there, even though I get it, we all hate prisoners and all the bad guys, and they shouldn't have any creature comforts, right? That's everybody's argument. Well, what do you want to do about the guards? What about the people who have to cook the food, right?
What about the people, to that point, you can't just send, I mean, it's about a mile and change, I think, off of the coast of San Francisco. I was at Fisherman's Wharf, and I took pictures of Alcatraz Island, but you don't have shift changes where you've got to get on a boat that takes. I mean, it's just a weird thing to do.
Right, like you're gonna have the people who work there are probably gonna have to stay there for an extended period of time, and then you'll swap them out every so often, whether it's weekly, monthly.
To what end? Like we don't. I'm not arguing with you. I know we're on the same page here, but like it literally feels like he watched The Rock or Escape from Alcatraz starring Clint Eastwood. And just went, oh, Alcatraz, it's tough. I'm tough. Let's reopen that. And I know that sounds like I'm making this juvenile and stupid. I'm not backing off that statement because I genuinely think it's very possible.
There was someone online that made the argument that there was a movie on about Alcatraz.
Yeah, it was Escape from Alcatraz with Clint Eastwood.
But that is, to me, that goes into the petty, annoying stuff that I don't care about. My issue is, Alcatraz isn't feasible, right? Like, listen, I deal with development, I deal with building big buildings, right? And it is not feasible. You're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars to get it back operational, not to mention the millions of dollars it would cost to run and operate it. It makes no sense, especially when we've got fucking supermax prisons right here. Right,
Leavenworth, Kansas.
Right, like that's not the only one. There's multiple supermax prisons across the country where if you wanted to change the rules of what gets you thrown in the supermax, you could. They could handle it. The infrastructure is already there in place, functioning just fine, right? Or if you're that desperate, then just build a extra supermax prison somewhere here on the continental U.S. and I guarantee you, it will cost less than trying to fix Alcatraz. Now, I'm not saying that we need to go and build this super extra max prison hellhole in the center of the U.S. that we send people to. That's a terrible idea. Human rights violations left and right. You know, conservative contractors grifting left and right. Like that becomes their thing where they make money. Okay, fine. Right? But at the end of the day, if you really feel that we need that level of assumed deterrent, right? Because prison isn't a deterrent. If it was, we would have less crime than we do. But if you feel that would help, then just instead of spending that money to go fix Alcatraz, right? Because because Alcatraz is it's a historical landmark, right?
Yeah.
And the National Federation. You can make an argument, right? And I've done this to where I've made the argument why something needs to be considered historical so I can get historical tax credits. There's also, right, in the world of development, but there's also an argument you can make where something should lose its National Historic Registry. And one of the reasons is, like, listen, this building is dilapidated and literally falling apart. It can't be saved. And Alcatraz is actually in that argument where, because people are like, it's a historic landmark. You couldn't even do anything with it because of that, right? And I'm like, guys, you think that you're making the argument, right, that will stop this from happening. That's an easy hurdle that we can get over. Right, I can get like my dumb ass can get over that hurdle in a day. Right, I already know the form that I would sign. I know what I would put in that form. I've never even been to fucking Alcatraz, and I can tell you, right? Like you could pull the stuff that you need to pull and just say like, yeah, this should lose its National Historical Registry. Right, that's not going to be the thing that's going to stop this from happening. What the government has to understand, and Trump and everyone else, is that it's so financially unfeasible to do it that you could literally do something in the middle of the U.S., right? Put it in the fucking desert in the middle of Arizona, Nevada, whatever, and build your hellhole. And I promise you it will cost less than whatever bullshit you think you're going to try to pull off with Alcatraz. Now, whether they get to building something else on the continental U.S. or not, they're not going to go forward with it. Right, like they're going to do a feasibility study.
Alcatraz?
Yeah, they're not going to move forward with it because they're going to do a feasibility study that's going to be so absurd. Right, the feasibility study is going to be something that they're not going to be able to afford. Right, so I mean, like, so I think that is for bluster and it's just to get a rise out of people. Good job, you guys won on that. I don't think it goes much further. I'm sure the Department of Prisons will put some effort into it. But someone there is going to be like, just give him this and tell him to just forget about it.
Yeah, but it's in the God King's head, so they have to at least entertain it and give it pretend consideration. All right, we're already over. I wanted to talk about the two things we left on the board. One of them is, and let's give it the consideration it deserves, which is almost none. There is a Colorado fan suing the NFL for $100 million because of the psychological trauma he suffered by Shedeur Sanders not getting drafted until the 5th round. And if, you know what, that's all I gotta say. Like, we talk about frivolous lawsuits fairly regularly. So you as a fan were so traumatized by this that you think you're entitled to $100 million.
You know what the worst part about is? I believe that he's serious. That's the worst part.
Do you really?
It. I believe he is serious. Now, I believe it's a complete waste of time, frivolous lawsuit. I'm a firm believer that I think that the message in the Avengers movies with Thanos being the bad guy maybe that wasn't the right man. Maybe Thanos was actually the good guy. And we should have listened to him, and we need him to come and
snap his fingers and have this guy go away.
No, not this guy. Whole lot of guys. I don't care who goes away. If I'm in the half that goes away, fine. Just put me out of my misery because this timeline that we're living in is absurd. But look, as it relates to Shedeur Sanders did a lot wrong leading up to the NFL draft, right? Yeah. NFL teams individually looked at it and said, look, motherfucker, I am a billionaire, right? I've got a GM who has picked really good talent. I've got a coach who has won or who I think can win or whatever, right? You are a kid coming out of Colorado, right? The best thing that you have on your resume is that you were the most accurate passer in college football. Well, if you look at who else is on that list of highest accuracy percentage in college football over the last 20 years, it is not a list that you want to be on if you're an NFL quarterback.
How many of them are from BYU?
None.
None, really? Okay.
None. No. But it is a list of
one Detmer in there.
There's a Brandon Whedon is on that
Okay.
list. Right? It's a lot of guys who were really accurate in college, but at the end of the day, it didn't translate to the NFL.
Right. And accuracy is completion percentage, which, depending on the style of offense you run, could be
right? If you're only throwing 3-yard outs, then okay, or outlet passes to the running back, you're super accurate. But are you a good quarterback is a different question, right? And so, I mean, his last year they were 9-4, which is good considering that 2 years prior they had they didn't win any games.
Shedeur Sanders' career starting record is right around 500. He's a couple games over 500.
No,
I looked it up. It was like 13-11 or something. At Colorado.
At Colorado. But you can't exclude Jackson State.
Okay.
You can't. And here's why. Because if you can't exclude Jackson State, and that's not fair to Shedeur Sanders, because Steve McNair, right?
All right.
Because fucking Carson Wentz. What about Steve McNair?
Put up stupid numbers.
At Alcorn State.
At Alcorn State, but dude.
1AA. FCS.
Yeah.
Right? But you never even saw him play live in college, because I did, and he was a man amidst boys.
I actually did.
Okay.
I mean, not live physically. I watched his highlights.
No, I watched him literally in person against YSU.
I did not do that.
Which was unbelievable, because those YSU teams were absurd with Jim Tressel, and Steve McNair was like a complete. He was just a different cat. Now, so what I'm saying is, look. Shedeur Sanders is a good quarterback. Shedeur Sanders, I believe, will be a good NFL quarterback as long as his head is in the right place, which I think ultimately it will get there, right? I think he got a little too caught up in the moment, in the hype with his dad, everything else. And I think Deion would admit that if he had a chance, they would go back and they would have done things different. I think the NFL teams did him dirty, but I do not believe that it was a conspiracy. I think each individual team said, fuck that. Not dealing with it. I'm not dealing with him. I'm not dealing with his dad. I'm not dealing. He was going into some of these interviews unprepared, right? In preparation for these interviews. It's a job interview.
Right. We talked about this.
Right. They give you hey, here's the playbook. You need to know this percentage of the playbook when you come in and talk to us about whether we're going to draft you or not. He chose not to learn it and said, what are you going to do to support me and my brand? And these teams looked at him and like, who the fuck are you? We don't care who your dad is. Nothing. Right. And we won't draft you. They didn't need a conspiracy to do it. They didn't. There wasn't. This whole big thing. They just each team looked at him and said, "No, we're not dealing with it."
Yeah, we got one last week.
And people were talking about the Steelers. Like the Steelers, like, oh, well, how could the Steelers? Mike Tomlin, he's a black head coach, and he had Justin Fields, and he had Russell Wilson, and he brought back Mason Rudolph. Well, here's the thing: they clearly didn't like him either, right?
And then you need a quarterback.
Right, and they desperately need a quarterback. They took Will Howard instead, who actually I like more, which I think in a normal fucking timeline, going back to Thanos, right, Will Howard probably would have been in the first round. But we have this weird, wonky thing that happened this year where you had a lot of guys who were very productive, very good on winning teams that some reason people looked at them and said, you know what? You were just too good. I'm not going to draft you. Your numbers, I don't buy them, right? Like, it's insane the way this draft went.
Right. We're going to transition to the Steelers in a second, but I do have a pre-mini camp question for you. Do you think Will Howard starts the game for the Steelers this year? Because I think he probably will.
No.
All right.
And my reason is Aaron Rodgers is...
If Aaron Rodgers goes there, that changes my opinion.
Well, let me finish. I'm all but certain Aaron Rodgers ends up being a Steeler. I will admit, inside information. But the reason why he's not signing right now is not what you think it is.
Yeah, we talked about it at the start.
Right. And so because of that, that's why I think he doesn't start. I think if it was Will Howard, Mason Rudolph, and Skylar Thompson, I think that Will Howard would have a chance at beating those other guys out and being a starter, or at some point starting a game. I am pretty sure, pretty convinced, and pretty confident that Aaron Rodgers ends up signing at some point in time between now and camp. He ends up being your starter. Barring injury, I doubt that Will Howard or Mason Rudolph starts a game, unless it's the end of the season, you've got the division wrapped up, then they throw one of those guys in there to play the last game of the season.
Or you're 5-10.
I mean, that's cute, but we haven't been below 500
I know.
in fucking 20 fucking years.
That was a jab. You took a few of me earlier. I was throwing one back. All right, last thing. I'm going to throw this all to you. George Pickens gets traded from the Steelers to the Cowboys.
Yeah, it's fine. I mean, look, immensely talented guy, but attitude problem. Mike Tomlin led the charge to get rid of him. And look, I liked him. I wanted to keep him. I thought him and DK would be great together on the field. Once they didn't trade him during the draft, I didn't think that they would actually trade him after the fact, mostly because I didn't think that teams would get a third-round pick for him. But Dallas Cowboys step up, give him a third-round pick. They do some other bullshit at the bottom of the draft with swapping fifth and sixth-round picks. Well, who cares? So I'm not really that upset about it. And the reality is, look, I'm looking at the Steelers' offense. Everyone's like, you don't have that other weapon. I think knowing that Aaron Rodgers is coming, I could also tell you that Alan Lazard is coming to Pittsburgh, right? Aaron Rodgers, won't go anywhere without Alan Lazard. It's just a weird sort of thing, and I kind of appreciate it. But Alan Lazard, he's not great. He's not terrible. He's better than what the Steelers have right now in that 2 spot at receiver. I think Lazard, DK Metcalf, Austin, Freiermuth, Jalen Warren running the ball, the kid that we drafted out of Iowa wanting the ball. I think the offensive line probably is a little bit better than it was last year, assuming that they could stay healthy. All of a sudden, the reality is with Aaron Rodgers at quarterback, I think you've got you're going to end up winning that between 10 and 12 games again, right? Which nobody wants to hear if you're a Steeler fan. I think every non-Steeler fan is saying, bullshit, you guys are going to go 5 and 12. They're not. It's just Tomlin's too good of a coach, and that's the problem, right? That's literally the problem, because what should have happened with the rosters that he's been winning 9 and 10 games with, they should have only won 5, which should have put us further up in the draft.
Oh, so that's kind
where
of
we could have gotten a guy.
Curse, yeah.
Right, but we keep winning 9, 10, 11 games, right? And then you can't go and get that guy. And I think the way the roster is constructed, looking at the defense, looking at the weapons on offense, if you've got Aaron Rodgers, I'm sorry, folks, you're going to win 11 fucking games.
If they get Aaron Rodgers, they could.
Now Mason Rudolph, I think Mason Rudolph, you probably win 9. Will Howard, I don't know, right? I like Will Howard a lot. Is it Ohio State bias? Yes, but at the same time, he's 6'4", 3/4. He's 235 pounds. Does he have Josh Allen's arm? No, but he's got plenty of arm to get the ball down the field. I watched him throw it to Jeremiah Smith, 40, 50 yards down the field. No fucking problem. On the money. He can make all the throws. Is he 100% accurate all the time? No, but his completion percentage is fucking 70%. Right? So, over the course of his career.
I honestly think Will Howard could end up being your long-term guy.
He ran for more yards.
And I'm biased, too, because I'm an Ohio State fan as well. But I just liked his command of the game. He played in 2 different systems.
And here's the thing. The guy, he won a lot of games at Kansas State, right? He had Kansas State on the verge of making the college football playoff last year, not in 24, but in 2023. And they almost played spoiler basically to Ohio State, right? They were part of that sort of mix that kind of threw all that shit off out of whack. I like Will Howard, but the reality is, I don't think he ends up playing this year. I think you end up getting Aaron Rodgers. I think you end up back in that sort of position where you're back in the playoffs. Either you could win the division, right? But even if you don't, I think you're in the wild card. The question is,
it's a tough division, though.
Can you get over the hump and actually win a playoff game with Aaron Rodgers? I think that's kind of got to be where you're at if you bring him in. But then if you don't bring him in, then it's almost like, fuck, we're going to win 9 or 10 games with Mason Rudolph, right? And then so I think the difference between the two ends up being a couple games, but you're still picking in the 20s. Right.
Yeah.
And so everyone's talking about stockpiling draft picks. One, I don't love the 26 QB draft class like everybody else does. I just do not. I don't see franchise guys there. I see guys that'll probably be good, but I don't know if they're worth, throwing your hat in the ring for. And you also, in order to do it, again, I think the Steelers are going to end up winning. They're going to be picking somewhere between 18 and 27, right? Maybe 28, best case scenario, right? And people don't understand the formula of what it takes to trade up into the top 5 to get one of those guys, right? You guys don't understand. There's literally a whole fucking point system, and you need a whole lot of fucking points to be able to move up from the high teens, 18, 19, 20, to even get close to even get to fucking 10. More or less, I mean, top 5.
You were in a cab with me when you told me that the Bills traded the number 12 overall and 2 second-rounders to move up 5 spots.
Exactly.
And I didn't handle it great.
Right.
I ended up being proven very wrong. Josh Allen's my guy. I was wrong. Thrilled to be wrong. But they give up that to move up 5 spots. Now you're talking about...
I'm sorry, you left something out of talking about you were wrong. You didn't acknowledge how right I was. Can you do that, please, sir?
I was drinking a lot in those days. I really don't remember.
Okay, well, we have the results. We know how good Josh Allen is. Just acknowledge how white I was.
How white you are?
Right.
Oh, so you said white. I don't remember what you said. I honestly don't remember what you said about Josh Allen. If you said
you really don't?
I genuinely don't. I'm not.
Okay.
We are at Whiskey Congress on Instagram and X. Steve is angry now. And we're done. Unless you want to throw in another jab.
Nope.
We're done.